Sometimes when you're working on a project, you might get a surprise or two, but nothing too serious. However, on this one, it's going to be a bit different and in the worst possible way. In fact, after seeing the problem with this mower, I almost gave up on the project, and when you see what I'm talking about, I would hope that you would feel the same way too. All I can say is hold on to your hats for this one because there's a lot going on with this mower. In today's video, we're going to be looking at this Toro lawnmower, and the problem is that we're still trying to figure out if it's worth saving. But as we get further into the project, it's going to surprise us with a few interesting situations, and then you might understand why it was given away in the first place. Now, I am going to try and repair this lawnmower, but yours might be a little different, so this might not work on yours. So if things are not working out for you, like in the video, please ask about it. I'll be glad to answer your questions. Now, one of the best features about this mower, at least in my opinion, besides an extremely robust engine, is the self-propel system. It's very intuitive, meaning it's very easy to use because you don't have to think about it to use it. When you want it to work, all you have to do is walk. That's it. And if for some reason you don't want to use the system, just grab the fixed handle instead of the one for the self-propel. While on most other systems, you'll need to hold down a bar, twist a handle, or use some other motion to activate it. Now, even though we lubricated the brake cable in the last video, it would seem that it could still use a bit more of it. Also, the metal part of the cable is bent, probably because the cable is not wanting to slide in it, but instead just lifting the cable and hitting the guide. After spraying it down with more lube again, I'll try and straighten out this metal part, and even if it doesn't work any better, at least it'll look better. And after another round of lubricating and working the handle back and forth, it now seems to be working a whole lot better. Now, I do intend on starting this engine, so I'd better check and make sure that it has enough oil in it, otherwise we could end up damaging it. Now, the oil is a bit dirty, but it could be a lot worse, and after checking the oil level, it would seem that there's plenty of oil in it as well, which to be honest is kind of strange. Now, the reason why it's strange is because I'd expect a mower that's given away for free to be in worse shape than this one is. And so far, aside from the faded paint, it looks like it was taken care of because no one who maintains the oil on their mower would just give it away. Now, the fuel tank is empty, which is no surprise there. It just means for the test start, we'll have to spray some fuel into the carb. Now, luckily for us, it did start and it seemed pretty healthy, meaning it wasn't making any obvious strange noises. Now, I do intend on putting gasoline in the fuel tank, but before I do that, I want to take this opportunity to be able to lay the mower on its side for an inspection. And it's a good thing that we did because it looks like there's about 10 years worth of long grass wrapped around the drive axle. In fact, it's so bad that it's making contact with the rear guard, forcing the axle to have to fight against it. Now, I kind of knew something was wrong with the drive line because when I was pushing the mower around, I noticed a fair amount of resistance from the drive line, but I was not expecting this. Now, there's not only just grass wrapped around the axle, but fibers, probably from a pillow or a blanket. So after removing most of the grass from the drive axle, it seems to be just a bit easier to spin. However, there's still something keeping it from spinning freely. I'm also going to spray some lube on some of the contact points to help out, then I'll put the mower back on its wheels and see if it's any better to push around. Well, it's certainly better than it was before. However, it's still just a bit crunchy when rolling, but I've got an idea on what that could be though. The next thing that I want to do is to put a couple of ounces of gasoline into the fuel tank, check that the carb is not leaking, and then try and start it. Now, since I don't have any history on this mower, I don't know when the last time it was used, so being a bit cautious just so I don't have a huge gasoline leak makes sense. And after a couple of minutes, I don't see any gasoline coming from the carb, so it should be okay to try and start it. So we just got surprised twice during that test start. First, it started, which is pretty amazing, and secondly, we also realized that the self-propel is not working at all. But at least we won't have to worry about looking at the engine and the carb, and we'll only have to focus on the drive system. Now, on these personal pace systems, sometimes over time, because of wear and tear, all you have to do is adjust the anchor for the cable and it should fix the self-propel. So after moving the cable down a few notches to put more tension on the cable, all we have to do now is start the mower and test out the self-propel. Now, unfortunately, that fix did not work, and we'll have to dig into the drive system a little bit deeper. But first, I want to look at the wheels and the drive gears. Now, if you didn't think the drive system on these personal pace systems was special, just wait until you see the back of the wheel. That's right, the gear that's on here is made out of metal, which you would think was normal, but on most cheaper systems, this gear would be made out of cheap plastic instead. Now, the part that's making this mower a bit tough to push around could be the drive gear. You see, when you're pushing the mower without the self-propel working, the wheel is actually spinning this gear on the axle. Now, this gear is supposed to be lubricated once in a while as part of its maintenance, but most never do it. That makes this gear really tough to spin on the axle and makes it tougher to push the mower around when you're not using the drive. After clearing the opening on the end of the axle and spraying brake cleaner in it, it's already much easier to spin. However, to finish off, I'm going to use some lithium grease as well, but use whatever grease you have around. After that, clean off any extra grease so that it won't collect dirt, and you should notice that it's now much easier to spin. Now, as a test, I want to start the engine and test to see what exactly this gear is doing. Now, as you just saw while I was engaging the drive, this gear did nothing, which means I'll have to look under the mower and check out the drive belt along with the transmission itself. But before I do that, I also want to do a little bit of maintenance to the height adjuster and also the wheel bolt. Now, this wheel bolt was quite rusty and even had some buildup on it, but after running it on the drill along with the Scotch-Brite pad, it now looks a whole lot better. And before I install it back onto the mower, I'll just add some lithium grease to it, and that should make the wheel spin on it a lot easier. Of course, this will not fix the self-propel, but on the off chance that we can't fix it, this will at least make the mower easy to push around. Now, as you can see, if I give the wheel a light spin, it's now spinning with a lot less effort than before. Now, the other wheel bolt was in even worse shape. So with them looking this bad and the drive gear not being well lubricated would explain why it was so difficult to push this mower around. So after spraying it down with some brake cleaner, I'll then reinstall it. After that, I want to remove the blade so that we can get a better look at the drive belt. So first off, the belt is not broken, which is great news, and it's still on the drive pulley under the engine. That's the reason why this metal guard is on there in the first place, to make sure it doesn't come off. You can also see that there's plenty of tension on the drive belt when I try to activate it, which means there's plenty of tension on the drive belt, so it should work, but unfortunately, that means there might be something wrong with the transmission instead. So here's the pulley and the belt above the transmission, and you can also see that the belt is still on the pulley as well. However, if I try to spin the engine with the drive engaged, you can see that the pulley on top of the transmission is not spinning. You can also see that the belt around the drive pulley is not able to grip it and instead just slipping on it. What that says to me is that there's something keeping the pulley on the transmission from spinning. That brings us to a major issue with the pulley. Now, as you can see, the pulley should not be able to move like this independently of the transmission. So to find out what's going on with it, we'll need to take the cover off the transmission and see if we can find out what's going on inside of it. After taking off the cover, what we find inside looks very strange. This is supposed to be grease in here, but what we find is grease and dirt. That's the reason why it's clumping like this. And the only reason why we get this much dirt in here is that there's an opening in the body of the transmission, which is not a good thing. And after getting the majority of that dirt out of the body, we can finally see the larger of the two gears, and what we see is not good either. Now, the teeth on the gear is completely packed with dirt, and also the teeth themselves seem very worn out. That means this transmission is severely worn and may need a lot of parts to fix it. Now, also in that grease and dirt, I can see that there are BBs, which if you didn't know it, means the input shaft bearing has let go. That's the reason why dirt was able to get into the transmission and why this transmission is not working at all. That means this transmission will either need to be repaired or replaced, which could cost quite a bit of money. So here's the situation. We have a running mower that does not have a working self-propel, and the cost to fix it could severely cut into the profits we make on its sale. So I now have to make a tough choice if I should sell this mower the way it is at a reduced price or try and fix it. That way I can ask full price for it, and depending upon what time of year I sell it will make a huge difference in the amount of money I can make. I really hate to say it, but this is going to be a really difficult choice that I have to make. The biggest reason why is even if I can find the transmission at a really good price, replacing it is going to take a really long time, so it may not be worth my time to do so. So my question is, what would you do if this was the situation you were in? Sell it now for cheap or sell it fixed for a higher price? Also, selling a partially working mower might make it really hard to sell as well. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.